Good afternoon and good evening to the folks who has joined here. Next 20 minutes, I'll be talking about the tooling aspects and the cost aspects of the EBS, e-business suite on OCI. So first, let us see why Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and especially for EBS point of view. So if you see here, there are three aspects. If you're running an EBS on OCI, why should one run an EBS on OCI? One, for superior performance, tooling, and support. Now, when you talk about the tooling and automation, definitely any cloud provides that particular automation. But when compared to our competition, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure has a beautiful tool they created called EBS Cloud Manager, which is very good in terms of automating most of the activities as a Apps DBA or as a DBA you'll be performing on the cloud. But if you're talking about the public sector and some of the regions doesn't support EBS Cloud Manager, not at all a problem, because we at INFOLOB has created an infrastructure as a code using the Terraform, where we can mostly leverage that code in doing some of the automations on the cloud. Now, the other important aspect, if you see the infrastructure, which is the isolated tenants, dedicated network performance, no noisy neighbors, which is going to give you a superior performance for your e-business suite. Let me share my experience where I started working on moving the e-business suite on-premise to the public clouds almost like 8 years back. And 8 years back, OCI Gen 2 was not existing, but it was the AWS. I was performing these particular aspects of moving EBS to the AWS, and the final D-Day when we are going live, it's me and my entire team are really so tensed that there are a lot many complaints from the customer that, oh, my EBS was performing perfectly on the premise, but when you move to the cloud, it started behaving, it's very slow and all those things. And then we have to break our heads trying to see how we can improve the performance of that particular EBS on AWS that time, where we were doing some of these provision IOPS, adding a lot of provision IOPS to improve the performance. And then suddenly the problem shifted towards the cost. The cost shoots to the sky. But in the last 4 years, where I have done many e-business suite migrations, as well as most of the data center workload migrations to OCI, every customer comes to us and says, we feel that the performance of the EBS is far better than on-premise with on OCI running. So that's because the underlying infrastructure, the Gen 2 infrastructure, is completely designed for enterprises, and the provision IOPS concept doesn't exist in Oracle, but they provide you a block storage which is full of the PIOPS. Everything is in flash drives which are running behind the scene. So this is where why Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, especially for these workloads. Now, if Oracle is providing these particular workloads, is it so costly? Absolutely not. When compared to the competition, your whatever the Mark and Brent has mentioned, the standard virtual machines which are very much required for running your EBS instances, the bare metal cloud options, all those things are superior in performance, and the price wise they're cheaper when compared to, and this is a little bit old slide, but definitely as Mark mentioned, you can look at those public calculators and all. But one thing I wanted to stress here is the incoming is always free in any public clouds, but outgoing is costly. And if you see, this is the important aspect when you talk about the internet data egress. For 50 terabytes per month, Oracle costs you this, but whereas you look at the competition, it's a humongous. That's where the presentation where we are running currently, Zoom, has reached out to Oracle because of the simple reason of the data egress is the other aspect. Now, from the cloud business case, a large EBS environment from an on-premise to OCI, definitely, I think, yes, sorry for the trouble, because there is an glitch on my controls. So fine. So to talk about the migrations, when you're talking about the large, there's a huge investment from the data center operations point of view, the licensing and all those things. But this is something where within 6 months to 7 months, you can save a 50% direct savings when you're talking about running an EBS on the cloud, especially we don't need to pay all these the data center costs and all those things, and then the capex versus opex, all those stuff. But to summarize in the next slide, let me talk about, it's a Oracle slide, a 5 years TCO, what Oracle has done for an e-business suite on Oracle Cloud for the 1,200 users. It costs 40% less than on-premise if you're running an EBS on OCI. And when compared to AWS also, definitely it's cheaper when you're talking about, because we are significantly saving upfront hardware, ongoing facilities, IT administration and support cost, and automation, which I spoke about, also reduces a lot of labor cost, and do more with less is the concept. Now, in the next few slides, we'll talk about the tooling and accelerators, what INFOLOB brings into the table. So if you see here, my slides are a little bit faster than me. Let me come back. So we at INFOLOB has created some of the migration approaches. No one size fits all. So what we're talking about here on the left side is a data center migration. We can do the complete data center migration or bits and pieces. For example, you're looking for an e-business suite or any of the enterprise applications. We have our own upgrade toolkit. We use the Cloud Manager extensively. We use some of the third-party block level tool migrations in doing the migration approach to the complete OCI. You can choose whatever you want, the Exadata cloud service or a DB systems, or a database can be on an plain VM, all those options. So similarly, we have like if the customer wants to migrate the associated technologies which EBS is communicating to onto the OCI, we do that as well. Right from the data center migrations, we have expertise in building, providing those. Now, coming back to 4 aspects of it, when especially on the public sector or any of the enterprise customers, there are 4 important things. One is the enhanced availability, observability, which is also important from an regulations point of view, and all, security and control. So if you look at as a small diagram, which you are seeing on the screen here, normally we call it as a VCN, which is a virtual cloud network. It's a logical data center on your cloud for a customer. So it is logically separated, and within a VCN, all your environments exist. So if you're talking about the availability point of view, every region which is built up is coming out with a high availability domains. We call it as 2 distinct data centers. But any single region with single availability domain, we have a concept called a fault domains. We configure a highly available solution for you on the cloud when you're talking about. And observability, saying that how do we ensure the performance of it? You're talking about the block volumes, integrated object store for your backups. So it is like everything packaged offerings from Oracle to take care of your entire necessities. Now, the observability or the security point of view, VCN is a virtual cloud network, and we have some firewalls or security rules, we call it as, and we can have a private subnet, a public subnet concepts, and dedicated connection between your on-premise to the OCI via those megaport and all what Mark has mentioned about. And the other advantage where none of the other cloud providers has is your database scaling. You can scale your database as well as you can run a rack within the OCI, which is one of the major aspects, and only rack is available on OCI, not any other clouds. And data guard, all these are some of the things which are very much required for running your EBS on OCI. Now, looking at the Cloud Manager for the next 3-4 minutes, we'll just go deep into the Cloud Manager. So where exactly this Cloud Manager comes into picture, handy for you people, is there are 3 things what predominantly Cloud Manager does: your provisioning aspect. When you talk about the cloud, It should be a click of a button, you provision the things rather than installing, configuring, and all those things. So there it provides a one-click topology for your launching a particular cloud, the EBS instance, or an advanced configuration where you want a customized way of launching the things. And move and improve, where you can use the cloud manager, which I will go to show you in the next slide, where moving from your on-premise to the OCI using a cloud manager you can perform. But is it sufficient after moving to the cloud? Absolutely not. We have your lifecycle management where you want to. Most of the DBS does these clonings on the after moving on to the things, or on-premise also. So creating a DR environment, creating a taking a backups. All those options are available using a cloud manager. So how an UI looks like, I'm not going to read through all the left-hand side, but let me give you an option where if somebody wants to create a one-click provision, where most of the time what happens is the new versions coming up, there's a Vision instance, and you want to have a feel of it, how it happens. You can just launch a click of a button, you can launch the Vision instance on a single node. But for a production or a non-product environment, so you have to have a multi-node deployment, you can do with an advanced feature. Fine. What else we have in the life cycle? If you see here on the right side where my arrow is, we can clone it, we can delete a particular backup, or we can create a backup or launch a environment from a backup. All those options are available at a click of a button. You're not writing any code, you're not doing anything behind the scene. It's completely automated when you're talking about a cloud manager. Now, this is another anatomy of a migration. If you see here, imagine we're at an on-premise and you have your app tier and DB tier, and using the EBS Cloud Manager, and there is somebody called an object storage. It's an object storage where the backup will be taken into an object storage, and from here the launch of those particular the production or a non-production or a non-prod environments can be launched on the particular OCI point of view. So using the EBS Cloud Manager, you can perform these tasks as well. Now, when you especially talk about the security aspects, or in a typical environment where there are separation of duties are very, very important when you're talking about, especially in a public sector or any of the enterprises, where I'm going to discuss about 4 roles. One is we have something called a tenancy administrator. Who is this guy? So this guy is a super root administrator, or we call it as like every organization when they buy the OCI, a tenancy administrator role will be given to a single individual who decides to create some compartments. What do you mean by compartment? A compartment is a unique feature launched by OCI, and none of the other providers that time has this feature. So this is basically like you have a test environment. I can exclusively place test environment in a separate compartment, a development in a separate compartment, a production in a compartment, so that you are isolating it, you are restricting the policies, you're creating groups. Also from a cost point of view, you can manage this. So there is one guy called a tenancy administrator. And then comes, is it like when you talk about the OCI, like your data center also, we have a different concepts like a subnets, gateways, VCNs, routing tables, security lists. So network and security administrators, we call it as, is who designs this particular aspect. So he is also very much responsible, important for your cloud migration, whether you talk about e-business suite or whether you talk about anything, you work to any other workload on OCI, these roles are very important. And the third role is the cloud manager administrator, is another area where to deploy an EBS Cloud Manager, he defines the policies. Because when you have a large enterprise and you have multiple environments, not a single person does the things, but a single person manages this particular cloud manager and gives the application administrator the roles and responsibilities who actually does the day-to-day activities of your things. So let us a little bit delve deep into all these areas very fast. If you see here, network is the component on the bottom, and you're talking about a compartment. So cloud manager is a compartment, production, test and development, and you have these groups and policies, and few people only can access production, few people can do. So this is where the tenancy administrator does this planning and creating these compartments and define these particular policies. Now, the next role which you have is your network administrator. This guy talks about a VCN, creates a subnets, and a production separate subnet, test production separate subnet, development separate subnet, so that we are logically isolating them and we having a controls policies to categorize them. And then comes the cloud manager, who does this particular aspect of there's a separate, so cloud manager runs on a separate VM. We need to launch it, and he decides the administrative aspects of it, and then he provides the roles to the next guys who are our regular application administrators. They will be launching the EBS environments onto the production, test, and development. And this is only a representation, because the bottom is a network and the top is the compartment. It's only representation, but both are like running. This EBS is running inside the subnet. This EBS is running inside the subnet. So this is where the segregation of duties comes into picture. So it's a lot of confusion of, oh, this many things are required. Absolutely. Either you can club two roles to a single person, but definitely this kind of clarity gives you what exactly they're doing it. And INFOLOB will help you in defining these, designing these aspects, develop it. And if you say that you want us to operate, we can operate, or we can transition and train your teams in getting up to the speed on this, and then manage the show for you in case if you need your team members to do it, or in case if INFOLOB wants to get it, we also can do it.
So Satyendra, as you talk through the next slide, could you also clarify if EBS Cloud Manager is not available, then the other options for people? And
sure, Brent. Thanks.
As you talk through this on the next page, that'd be great.
Fine. I just added that in the previous one, but definitely the point what Brent raised, that if the EBS Cloud Manager is not available, as I told you, we have the infrastructure as a code, and we have automated the Terraform-based scripts using the infrastructure as a code. We help in defining, for example, a single click of a button, we can create the entire VCN, subnets, gateways, routing, but after designing. But implementation can be a Terraform-based command, which can create this. And even the launching of any, so if the Cloud Manager doesn't exist, we at INFOLOB also help you in creating those the infrastructure as a code using the Terraform, because Terraform is supporting across as per the marks point of view, and it is basically it's a third party, but again it's where Oracle is taken that support Terraform or an Ansible. You talk about, some customer says I have an Ansible at on-premise, I wanted to do it. We support that as well. So in the last 2 minutes, I wanted to just spend some time here, a day in the life of an Apps DBA, where on-premise versus cloud, is because DBAs are a lot busy on-premise doing cloning, taking backups, and all those things. So what we have done is, we have done a study where if I take a 1 terabyte of database, EBS instances with 1 terabyte of database size, it takes around 16-24 hours to clone in an environment on-premise. And that's where I said 16 to 24, it varies from the hardware and whatever it is. But when I do the same aspect, same amount of 1 terabyte DB along with EBS, we maximum take 3 hours. I've seen, because this is a reduction of 80% time and efforts on OCI using a cloud manager. And also there are some behind the scene technologies what Oracle provides of block level copy behind the scene, which helps to do a lot of fast speed up the entire process. Backup and recovery, it's a mundane and time taking on premise, and it's a one click with block level automation. And then scheduling, we can automate it. HA and DR, if you talk about on-premise, it's like you have to procure the things, procure the hardware, wait for months together, and then install, configure, patch it. Absolutely, it's on the cloud, it's matter of minutes or maximum hours. And if you want to configure a multi-zone support with the DMZ and all, I need to involve network administrators, security administrators, hardware guys, all those system admins coming into picture. But with OCI, you have this automated and few clicks provisioning once you know how to do the things and all. So that's where the beauty of the cloud, the automation of the cloud will help to reduce the amount of efforts a DBAs actually or a sysadmins actually puts behind the scene. And just to talk about we conduct the cloud roadmap assessment. We look at your application discovery and assessment, a business side of the story, infrastructure assessment, and provide you a roadmap and saying that, okay, this is what it looks like. Because we do a holistic view. We look at from a business side, we look at from an infrastructure side, and from an application discovery and assessment, because it's not EBS alone, but EBS might be integrated with other environments and other applications within your thing. So we have to do that thorough analysis and say this is where your the roadmap looks like when you talk about migrating to a cloud.